There are all walks of life in prison. There are men here who have been here 20 years and committed a crime when they were 14, and who came to prison as a teenager, never knew how to shave, didn't have a relationship with anyone, doesn't know how to separate his child self from his adult self. And those are the stories, and those are stories of transformation. The process it took for this person to change, those stories are never told.
There's so many negative images out there. I don't know what Orange is the New Black looks like, but I've seen plenty of prison movies, right? And even myself, when I was young, I had a certain image of who incarcerated people were and how they acted, and I think that's something that the public needs to know about, right? That's not true. There are people that want to change.
And the misconception is that we're no good to society, but we are good. And we can bring out a different perspective. We can show you a different light. You don't have to open up your whole heart, but let them work for it. We have to work for it again. We don't expect people to just give it to us. And if you don't see the change, then you have the right to reject me. How I got to prison was I committed a crime, first-degree murder. I gave up my whole life. I walked away from my family. Because when I committed my crime and went out there, I did that. I turned my back on my family. I left my community a broken person, a hurt person. I destroyed my community by the crime I committed, and I would like to give back.
I don't want to go too far back, but after my parents divorced, my mom remarried, I had a manipulative stepdad, they divorced. I had a disconnect with my uncles, my aunts, grandparents. It was a cultural feud. They were immigrants from Pakistan. So I didn't really get along with them. And my dad, there was a tease there from my dad, and I like to say, I don't know how my life would have been if he was all the way in my life, or how my life would have been if he was all the way out. But the way my life was, he was in and out. And my mom remarried and moved out of state by age 17. And when she left, I already knew that I was so rebellious against my uncles, aunts, my grandparents. And I didn't speak to them, I didn't talk to them, I would run away. So at age 17, I was homeless up until the age 18 where I committed my crime.
My first memories of my dad was him coming home from prison. It's the first time I laid eyes on him. I was told about him, he was a gangster, he was, in and out of prison. And also was told that, when I was young, he didn't want me. He didn't want to claim me. And I just grew up having this negative image about myself, that I didn't have worth, that I didn't have value. There's a lot of factors, and just be aware that, I say this not to excuse anything that I've done, but just to connect the dots for you, right? Just so that you can kind of see what led me here. But one night, while my dad was collecting a drug debt, he was stabbed, and that kind of put me over the edge. And I looked at that as just the opportunity to finally go to the ultimate extreme, to validate myself as his son, and as a gang member. Just all that whole culture, it all kind of culminated in this one night, and it just gave me that horrible reason. It just gave me the reason to finally go there, and I did. And that night, I shot and killed 2 people. Everyone told me, yeah, you're done. You're gonna die in prison. And it was really hard to stay positive and stay focused. There were times when I just felt like not living anymore. Just all that guilt, shame from the crime to my family. But I think as human beings, we kind of cling to hope. And I was hoping and praying that I would somehow beat my case, and that kept me going. And then when I lost, I was devastated. And I think around that time, I kind of got a little older. I guess I was more mature and mentally and emotionally developed to where I kind of just owned up to what I did. And I was sentenced to 30 years to life plus 11 years flat. I looked at being maybe 60 years old when I went home. And in my head, I said, well, I killed some people. I deserve that, and I can live with that. I guess that kind of kept me going. And when Senate Bill 260 came out, it just gave people who committed their crime as juveniles the opportunity to have their sentences amended and have special considerations for parole when they see the parole board. And I barely missed that, right? I was 19 when I committed my crime. But I was getting word that, they're gonna try to expand it. They're gonna try to expand it. And sure enough, I think about 1.5 years after that one passed, they started pushing Senate Bill 261, which raised the age from 17 and under to all the way to 22 years old. So October of last year, that got signed into legislation, and I finally got hope, like real hope. My earliest possible parole hearing date went from 2032 to October of this year. I get emotional because there was a lot that happened. I told my daughter she can finally have her dad and I can finally be a good dad. And she said, you always have been. And it's one thing that blew my mind.
So most of my time was spent in a maximum security level 4 prison. And in these level 4 prisons, there aren't any rehabilitative programs. The culture is very violent. There's a lot of violence, race riots, stabbings, assaults. And when those incidents happen, the prison goes on lockdown, which means I could spend from an hour to a year inside of a cell. So when we're on these lockdowns, there is no education. The education that will be given to you is basically what you give or what you want, how you want to educate yourself during these lockdowns. My first 10 years was spent 80, maybe 90% inside of a cell. So during that time, psychologically, I think the human brain is forced to tap into survival mode. I feel like that's relative to the individual. So how I related to survival was make sure my mind is sharp, I don't get defeated, go crazy, lose my mind. So I would read spiritual books, the Bible, the Quran, Buddhist books, or any self-help book that I would find. My favorite thing to read was about successful people. Anyone that had a success story, famous, I would love to read biographies or autobiographies about them. And I think I didn't realize at that time, but I think what it did for me was keep a sense of hope. And whatever hope looked like, I felt like I had something still to look forward to.
Prison can be a very hostile place. You're not guaranteed you're gonna make it out of prison. But am I gonna fall up and ball up in the corner and just say, well, it was me? I can't. 25 years of being in prison taught me that I can self-persevere, and I'm gonna go beyond that. Like I said, I won't ball up and go away no more.
Literally my first day being arrested, the first day going into a cell, it hit me. I mean, the empathy was there, all the feelings that come up of just hurt. And in that time at age 18, there was self-pity, but then there's also empathy for the crime I committed. There was anger towards my parents and my uncles, aunts, my grandparents. I was already getting fed up with my lifestyle, being homeless for about almost a year. So the moment I think for me was, you know what, I can't again let myself just lose. I need to do something. I need to make something better out of my life and give back to the people I've hurt.
So when I finally got into the groups and started really exploring the roots of my anger, the reason why I came here, I felt like I had the answer to what the world needs, and that was just empathy. And in cultivating that empathy, I started getting more victim awareness and understanding the impacts that I've caused. One of the things that I really tried to do was write a remorse letter. But this is not an excuse, right? Because I never wanted it to sound like that. But every time I try to write something, that's what it sounded like. Like nothing could excuse it. Nothing could make things right. There's a void that I've created that is impossible to fill. In my head, I'm like, what can I do, right? What can I do? There's nothing. And then so the only thing I could come up with was to be a better person, right? To honor them, to do what I can to teach the world everything that I've learned, and everything that we do here, I do what I can to bring it to the world, because I feel like that's the only way that I can make indirect amends.
I won't come back to prison. I'll do whatever I gotta do to stay out there, and if I'm behind, I'm behind. But I'll do what I have to do and be a better person. As long as my family is proud of me, I'm feeling good about myself, that's all that matters, because I can't ever come back to prison.
Education in here is really important, right? Because what happens is guys come in and they don't know about rehabilitation, right? That's something that we're never taught about on the streets or at home, right? What is rehabilitation, right? But we're taught about education, and that helps us open our eyes, right? Get a wider view of the world, right? And our place in it. So I think what happens is, at least for the Prison University Project, they gravitate to that. They find out you can get an AA for free. And everyone's like, oh yeah, I was supposed to get an education, you know? No one's like, oh yeah, I was supposed to go to anger management class and learn how to be a better person. No one thinks about that. But what happens is when they come to class, and like I said, they see a broader picture, they kind of change their worldview, and that actually opens the door for them to be more open to the self-help programs. So I think it's really important in here. And then on the streets, I think that gives you a definite advantage. It's already hard to go through the application process and to put in your resume with all these gaps in your work record. But when you come in there and you can say, hey, you know what, I did do this, it's gonna give you a better talking point. And if you sell it right, I feel like you can really utilize that and say, hey, look, I did rehabilitate myself.
A lot of people incarcerated that I've met, they only know one lifestyle. They only know one way to think. Unfortunately, they've never been exposed to anything other than what their communities and what their environmental influences have been. I've literally met guys who said, I'm a drug dealer and I will always be a drug dealer because that's all I know. Like, that's all I know. Maybe his parents, mom and dad, were drug dealers. So when you educate yourself, or when men like that educate themselves, they see a different world. And I feel like the best education is education of self. So when I went through my college program and started writing essays on certain topics, I started discovering more about myself rather than what I was writing about. And just how I viewed certain topics, certain theses that I had, was fascinating for me was my perspective on that. And when men, and I've seen in these classrooms, men who haven't been in a classroom in like 20 years, 30 years, and are finally able to express themselves and are expanded to something other than drug dealing, something other than being in gangs. I think it's one of the best forms of rehabilitation.
Since I have kids out there, I don't want to go back out into society the same way I came in. So if I can get a better education, then I can better articulate myself to my kids and sit down with them and help them through education, or encourage them to continue their education on the outside, which I have done. All of my kids are in college now, and my little daughter, she just turned 19, and she's in college, and she want to be this radiologist. And she was inspired by me because, well, if Dad can get his AA, then we can go to college and we can do things to get ours too. The education I received in here when I graduated in 2008, I was so proud to walk across that stage and to have my family cheering for me, and also seeing the tears of them crying and seeing that I'm turning my life around. That was big. I'm interested in going to San Francisco State to learn anything that deal with emotional intelligence, psychology and stuff. Because there are so many people hurt out there that maybe I can sit down with them, have healing circles, and be versed enough in that field to help people keep from going down the road that I went to, especially the community I'm going into, Oakland. I have family members that's hurt and been going through things, and I don't want them to be able to come into prison.
I do fear not being accepted by society and not getting certain jobs that I want. So what I have been thinking about, not just thinking about, what I've been pursuing is using my experience, using my incarcerated experience to create my own, not market, but a job, a career for myself. And one way I've been able to do that is there's a program here in San Quentin called Squires, and this program is a youth diversion program where at-risk youths from ages 12 to 17 come into San Quentin. This about 2 Saturdays out of a month. They spend a whole day with us. We show them the cell. They walk into the cells, they eat the food we eat, they step into our shower area, they see the yard, and kind of see the life that we live. But our real work is done through sharing our stories of incarceration. So I share my story of not just why I'm in prison, but what led up to me coming to prison. That's the most important part. So when I see this 13, 14-year-old and he's talking about his trauma, his experiences, I directly connect to this kid. And it's like I'm looking at myself when I see this 14, 15-year-old. So for me, returning back into society, I want to keep that experience, the experience that I've been through, and help out the youth in our community.
Adjusting to life is definitely going to be a huge culture shock for me. I've been down almost 20 years, and it'll probably be 20 by the time I come home. And to commit my crime at 19, to be a grown man now, that's going to be different, right? I don't know what it means to pay bills, to own a house, to even rent a house. So that's going to be an adjustment. Like I said, I'm fortunate to have my wife. She's going to guide me through everything and help me She's gonna tell me how to go get my license and how to go apply for whatever I need to apply, because I just don't know. So it's gonna be a big adjustment. I heard things are fast out there, right? The only time you see anything fast in here is if there's violence, right? That's the only time people run. So that's gonna be a big adjustment. And then going from that to the student life, I think that'll probably make me feel comfortable just from going through classes here. It'll make me feel kind of at home, you know, because these past few years I've been sitting in classes and sitting in groups. And when I finally get there, I think I'll really hit my stride, I guess, hopefully, and it'll bring me some peace.
You know, fortunately for me, this incident, as bad as it may sound, my family they came together. So as of right now, I have a very huge support system. I remember one of the lieutenants asked me, what does home mean? And he made me reflect on what home actually is. And home is where I feel like I'm comfortable, whether it's a roof or not. It's somewhere where I'm comfortable, I'm at peace. But to talk about the housing, the actual physical structure, I have different resources where I can go, family members and others. Just the thought of not having a stable home coming out of prison is extremely scary. And I say that from personal experience because being homeless and being on the streets, it's a very, very scary process to go through. Prison is a place where every day you do practically the same thing. You have a structure, you have a place to go, you have a bed, you get fed 3 times a day, there's showers available, there's things that you don't have to worry about. So leaving this place of consistency and going out into a free world, a place of complete inconsistency, not finding home, not finding a place to live, not finding education. I think the scariest thing for me is not being able to pursue my ambitions and my dreams and furthering my education, because I feel like it's just a revolving door for me to come back to prison.
So for students who are homeless, I think part of that reason is the stigma that comes with being formerly incarcerated. Like, it's hard to get a job. It's hard. I don't know what Man the Box is looking like or if it's really helping, but you know, when it comes to explaining those gaps in your resume, explaining what happened, it's really hard for guys to articulate that. You know, not everyone who's going home is a lifer. Like we have to do extensive preparation and extensive rehabilitation just to prove to the parole board that we're okay. But those guys who have, 3, 4, 5 years, who go home, they don't need anything but to just sit around. It's hard for them to really say, hey, this is what was wrong with me, and this is not, and it hasn't been completely addressed as deeply as a lifer would. I think your lifers are gonna be, sadly, we're gonna be at an advantage.
There's a stigma in there and it's gonna shut a lot of door with me coming out, especially when they hear what I was in for and I tell them a first-degree murder. And I mean, people put up red flags. I'll put up a red flag too. Will he murder me? That question is in there. Why did he do what he did? And if they was open to that and let me sit down and talk with them, then they would see a different light. I just didn't wake up that morning and saying I was gonna commit a crime. But it's through my past, and if we was to sit down and I could lay it out to them, it would probably make a change, and it might not. But the stigma there, and that's their choice. People tired of crimes. I can understand that and appreciate it, but I would like to have the opportunity to show another light.
Some of us have committed horrible crimes, right? And it's hard for people to get over that. But what they don't know is that we are human beings with wants and desires and issues. And the issues that we have are the same as everyone else's, right? Because I feel like everyone is just one step away from addiction. Everyone is one step away from anger, and let that anger get the best of them. And I think it's just a common misconception to say that we're different.